Before we dive in, there's a couple questions that I'd like you to consider. And these are things that I often ask new clients when they start working with me, or anyone who's been saying similar frustrations in their life. And so the first question is, what's one pattern in your life that feels stuck or repetitive? What's one pattern in your life that feels stuck or repetitive? Does anyone notice that this pattern that shows up in their life that feels stuck or repetitive, does anyone notice that it shows up in more than one area? Or is it just in one? And if that's true, consider that for yourself as well, because often the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So if there's an area of your life where there's a pattern that feels stuck or repetitive, this could be showing up for you in many areas in your life. Who here has ever felt like your body was reacting to something from the past, even when the present moment doesn't match it? Have you ever found that your body or felt that your body was reacting to something from the past, even when the present moment isn't the same, doesn't mirror that? Today, we're going to talk about limiting decisions. And many people have often heard limiting beliefs. It's a saying that's common, that's thrown around in all kind of like self-help spectrums in our world today. But limiting decisions is a really interesting one to talk about, because what does a belief give you in terms of personal power? It's very different from what does a decision give you in personal power, because when we can recognize that the problems that we're dealing with are connected to a decision can be changed. How limiting decisions shape your health, relationships, and success. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to explore something that affects every area of your life, from your health, your relationships, your confidence, your career. And most people have no idea this is happening because it's deep in the unconscious mind. We're talking about limiting decisions and how they quietly shape your patterns. So what we're covering today, here's a quick overview. We're going to talk about what a limiting decision actually is, how they're formed, how it may be affecting your life right now, and I will guide you through a quick exercise or experience so you can feel how these decisions work and the changes that you can feel in your body from starting to shift these. And if you want deeper support, I have 2 gifts for you at the end of this session. So thank you so much. I do appreciate that you're here with me today. And I want to make sure that I do give you something as my thanks. And so why this matters, most people are not stuck because they lack motivation or knowledge. Many of the clients that come to me say, I've tried everything and nothing works. Or maybe it works a little bit and then problems keep coming back. And I did a presentation last week talking about willpower and why willpower doesn't work. Because ultimately, it's our beliefs and it's the meaning that we place to what we're dealing with in our life that guides our behavior. And so if you're not changing the meaning, the behavior doesn't actually change. So willpower works for a little bit, and then you end up falling back into the same patterns. And so they're not stuck. People are not stuck because their unconscious mind is still following an old decision that was created years ago. Your unconscious mind always chooses safety over progress. If a decision once felt protective, it will keep running until you update the pattern. So what limiting decisions look like and how these show up? These are really common ones that I often hear from clients. They can sound like, I'm alone. It can sound like I have to hold everything together. This was definitely me in the past, going through a journey of being diagnosed with MS. This is a really common pattern I see with a lot of clients I work with, is the parentified daughter, as the holistic psychologist calls it. This is the person that took care of everyone else. Everyone else's needs were their responsibility as a young age. And so this can lead to the limiting decision of, I have to hold everything together. This can also lead to, I'm not enough. My body is not safe, or I can't trust myself is another common one. And these decisions feel true because they were formed in a moment that felt overwhelming or confusing. Your mind made sense of the world the best it could at the time. And so what kind of decision do you think might be running underneath your pattern? Share the first idea that came to mind, if you can, in the chat. If you have the chat open, this is meant to be a pretty interactive talk. And unfortunately, a lot of people said that they wanted the replay today, so it might be a little bit less interactive than usual. However, I would love to have a conversation with you. What's something that comes to mind for you when you think of an old decision that might be running a pattern underneath for you? How many of you realized this decision is something you would never consciously choose today? If that's you, type "that's me." If I could control my screen again. There we go. Okay, so how limiting decisions are formed. So as I mentioned, this is typically formed from a moment early in life. It might look really small from the outside, but inside your body, it felt intense. The experience that I have, I always talk about my story because it's a story that I comfortably can share because of confidentiality. I don't want to share deep stuff from clients, but I've heard so many different experiences that are very similar to mine. When I was a child, my dad left when I was 4, and I remember him saying to me, like, "Don't cry, you need to be strong, you need to take care of your mom." And so from 4 years old, I thought it was my responsibility to make sure my mom was happy and make sure she was taken care of. And so throughout life, when a nervous system feels like you are not the main priority in keeping you safe, or it feels like it has to be hyper responsive and high alert to everything, the nervous system and the immune system often mirror each other. A hyperactive nervous system can lead to a hyperactive immune system, hence MS can show up because it's autoimmune. And so while this looks small from the outside, on the inside of the body, it feels really intense. The unconscious mind steps in and makes a decision about how to stay safe. That decision becomes a rule, and because it was created during a moment of high emotion, it stays locked in place until you work with it directly. These old decisions show up in ways you don't expect. It shows up in your daily life today, even if it was something from a really long time ago. They influence your stress response, your symptoms, your boundaries, your confidence, your relationships, and even in your career, it can have an impact. Your unconscious mind continues to act as if this old moment is still happening, even if it was decades ago. For me, this was like almost 40 years ago, and my mind still responds in the same way, or it did until I started doing the work to help shift the limiting decisions. This is why patterns repeat even when you're trying to change them consciously. The good news, though, the good news is that these decisions can be updated. When you shift the original meaning, the emotional charge dissolves. Your unconscious mind no longer needs to protect you from that old moment. And this is why people experience real change so quickly with this type of work, with the type of work that I help with, which is there is hypnosis, there is neuro-linguistic programming, which is basically updating the operating system in your mind. Can you imagine going around in today's life with a flip phone and trying to do all of the things that these incredible smart devices that we have now do? It wouldn't be able to keep up. And so if your mind is still running old programming and old patterning from when you were younger, this is where challenges can happen. And so this is why doing the work to help support the unconscious mind, to help support these behaviors, makes a really big difference. Your unconscious mind no longer needs to protect you from that old moment. And this is why doing this stuff is very powerful. You are changing the root, not just the symptom. So let's do a quick experience or a quick demonstration of what this feels like. So you can feel this for yourself. So take a deep breath and soften your shoulders. And bring to mind a pattern in your life that feels stuck. That could be your health. It could be around relationships, confidence, anything really. And just ask yourself, if there was an old decision underneath that pattern, what might that be? And just notice. You don't need to force it. Whatever came up is simply your unconscious mind giving you information. This is how quickly these decisions start to reveal themselves when you work with them directly. During this quick experience, what did you notice? Maybe it was a word, or a physical sensation, or a thought, or anything. What did you notice? Who felt even a tiny shift in your breathing or tension as we explored that old decision? Anyone who's watching the replay of this, these questions that I'm asking you, feel free to send me an email and let me know what came up for you. The whole point here is to give you the ability to realize that things can change and that you can create that change. I don't do anything to my clients. I help them realize how much more personal power they have when it comes to changing the way their body is responding to things. I had a client a couple of weeks ago who had been dealing with pain. She had nerve pain. neuropathy in her feet after going through chemo. She was diagnosed with cancer earlier this year. And so this neuropathy was in her feet constantly. And she would notice it the most when she would lay down in bed at night. And it's like, okay, so how can we shift that pattern? Because sometimes pain shows up in the body or other sensations show up in the body. And in the time that they were created, they served a purpose. But as life goes on, the message is no longer needed, but the body is still responding to an old pattern. This is very similar to, I had another client with neuropathy, similar concept, but we had a conversation about, have you ever heard of, sometimes people will have phantom leg pain. So they go through some traumatic situation and they end up having a leg amputated, and then they can still feel the sensation of pain in their foot. This is because the nervous system is still sending out that pain signal, even though it's not possible for the pain to exist because the limb is no longer there. This can happen in so many different ways in our life, where the nervous system continues to respond in the same way it did in the past when it doesn't need to do that anymore. And so this is what is really helpful when we work with the subconscious, the unconscious mind, is we can help shift those patterns so it can help you move towards the things that you want to get to. Very helpful when it comes to getting rid of a habit. Very helpful when it's someone who's looking to lose weight, stop smoking. I work with a lot of MS clients and helping them realize that their body can actually work with them to move towards the goals they want to go to. So if this is something that you felt any sensations in your body, send me an email back and let me know. I would love to have a conversation with you more about that. So what becomes possible? There we go. Imagine who you become when that old decision no longer runs the show. Your nervous system can relax. Your body stops responding to old stress. Your relationships can start to shift. You show up at work with more clarity and more confidence. This is the doorway to creating a very different experience for your life. What is one area of your life that would transform first if this old decision no longer had power? Type that word or think of that for yourself or write it down, whichever way you're responding to this today. But who would like support in releasing these decisions more fully? If you look around your life right now and your life is absolutely pristine and perfect, this may not be the right fit for you. But if there's anything in your life that you can say, I wish something was different, and it's happening to me because, and well, things just don't work for me, and all of these different reasons that we make up in our minds of why things aren't moving in the direction that we want to go, this is where unconscious mind work is very beneficial, because things happen to us for different reasons, but it's based on what our mind decides to perceive and the meaning it decides to put to it. And so when you change that meaning, you can change the results that you have. My example is a great one. I was diagnosed with MS 20 years ago, and the beliefs and the identity that I held on to for a long time was that there's nothing you can do. A critical illness like that, or someone tells you that this is the way it is and there's nothing that can change that, it can be a tricky place to hang out in. But when you start to realize you don't have to stay there, you can choose differently. I've been symptom-free for 9 years for something that I was told that wasn't possible. So I don't say this to try and kind of brag or anything, but it's just to hopefully give you an idea of so much more is possible than you may have been led to believe and that you may have been experiencing in the last little while. So the most common questions that I hear, I actually had a client that I was talking to the other day, not a client, sorry, a woman that I was talking to at a networking group, and she was saying, I've tried hypnosis before and I can't be hypnotized. Ultimately, if you've ever been to a movie or ever watched a TV show and you laughed at the funny scenes and you cried at a sad scene, or if you've ever driven home at the end of the day or driven to somewhere very familiar and you get there and you think, I don't even remember the last 8 blocks. This is basically hypnosis. It's concentration and focus and deep relaxation. So ultimately, the whole objective of using hypnosis is to help shift things in a direction that's more beneficial for you. A movie can trigger you emotionally. That's having a physical response to suggestion. What if you use suggestions that help create a physical response in your body that helps you move towards the goal that you want? So I cannot be hypnotized is a common question. Ultimately, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. And so when we start to shift the patterns and the beliefs and the things that are underneath the problems that we're dealing with, it's pretty cool what can happen. If you think about it, you don't tell your heart to beat every time it beats. You don't tell your lungs to take a breath every time that you need air or oxygen. You don't tell your stomach what to do with the meal that you just ate. The unconscious mind controls 90 to 95% of what we do on a daily basis. And a lot of what it does is very beneficial. It's very helpful for us. But at times, if it's focusing on keeping you safe and that's its main priority over progress, over moving forward, it can be doing things that are actually keeping you stuck in that sense. But you're still waking up tomorrow. You know, you did this thing today, it wasn't really that great, but you woke up. So I'm just going to keep doing that again. And so this is where unconscious mind work is very beneficial. I talk a lot about strategies, how we have like a kind of a 4-step process that we all go through that leads to doing the thing that we want to stop doing. Well, when we can interrupt the process, the outcome changes. It's like if you were to go bake a, say you're baking a cake. And so the steps were you preheat the oven, you put all the ingredients in the bowl, you mix all the ingredients together, and then you put it in the oven for a certain amount of time. And when you open the oven, cake, you have cake. Well, what if you went in and you decided, you know what, I'm going to scramble up one of those steps. I'm going to preheat the oven and then I'm going to put all the ingredients in the bowl, but I'm not going to mix them. And then I'm just going to put it in the oven. And you open the oven, it's not a cake. It's a mess because everything is not incorporated the way it's supposed to be. It's the same thing when we scramble the steps in our own strategy that gets us to where we want to go. We can change the outcome completely. We talk about limiting decisions. We talk about emotions. Emotions under the surface can have a big impact as well. I was at a timeline therapy training session on the weekend, training course, and we clear 5 main emotions. So that's anger, sadness, hurt, guilt, and fear. And when you clear those things, it's pretty interesting to see how people's whole behavior and how they show up on a daily basis. And it's not something that you consciously have to do. Your unconscious mind will help you move in the direction that you want to when you start to kind of get rid of the static that's been hanging out underneath the surface. If you're here, I'm pretty sure you already know that staying stuck in the same place is not necessarily the best outcome for you. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for being here today, and I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.